What if the Virgo Blood Moon eclipse, Saturn entering Aries, and the upcoming Spring Equinox are all part of the same cosmic event, the breakdown of the old world so a completely new frequency of reality can emerge? Because when we look at the astrology unfolding right now, it almost feels like the universe is moving through a process very similar to something we see in nature every single day: composting. And this grand rising, while I was sitting quietly with my coffee after feeding my animals and moving through my normal morning rituals, this image kept coming through my mind: the soil. You know how when we compost, we take things that appear to be waste, banana peels, table scraps, old leaves, things that have reached the end of their life cycle, and we return them back to the earth? Well, at first it looks messy and it smells strange. Everything begins breaking down. But what's actually happening is alchemy, decomposition, transformation. The old material dissolves and becomes some of the richest soil on the planet. And as I sat with that image, I realized something. That's exactly where we are collectively right now in the sky. On March 3rd, 2026, we experienced a total lunar eclipse in Virgo, often called the Blood Moon and also known as the Worm Moon, the time of the year when the soil softens and the worms begin returning to the earth to prepare it for spring. And Virgo, interestingly, is the sign that rules the earth itself, the soil, the microbes, the digestive system of nature. Virgo understands how to take what is decaying and turn it into nourishment. So this eclipse wasn't simply emotional intensity, it was cosmic composting of old routines, old identities, old belief systems, old ways of thinking, breaking down like organic matter, returning to the soil. And this process is amplified right now because Mercury, the ruler of Virgo, is retrograde in Pisces, revisiting the waters of memory, intuition, and belief. Pisces dissolves the form. Virgo processes the material. So the mind itself is being composted. Old narratives dissolving back into the ocean of consciousness. And if things have felt uncertain, emotional, or very reflective, it may not be confusion. It may be this decomposition, the natural phase that happens before something new begins to grow. But this morning, this grand rising, something also came into my awareness as I sat there quietly. I heard the sound of a flute in the distance, and suddenly an image appeared in my mind: Saturn. Saturn, the great architect of the cosmos, the planet of structure and time and geometry. And Saturn is famous for something very unique in our solar system: its rings. Those incredible rings stretched hundreds of thousands of miles outward from the planet, forming perfect circular bands of ice and dust. But when we think about vibration and sound, something very interesting appeared. Sound naturally moves outward in circular waves. So when you strike a bell, the tone radiates outward in expanding rings. When the sound vibrates through water, it creates circular ripple patterns. So the thought that entered my awareness was this: what if Saturn rings are not just physical debris? What if they're actually visible resonant patterns, frozen sound waves, geometry created by vibration? Saturn, in that sense, becomes something like a cosmic tuning fork in our solar system, a planet that represents how frequency becomes structure. And Saturn holds another fascinating mystery. At the North Pole of Saturn, scientists discovered a massive hexagonal storm pattern, a perfect six-sided geometric structure swirling in the atmosphere. A hexagon, 6 sides, which immediately brings to mind the six-pointed star, the hexagram, the symbol found across many ancient traditions. 2 triangles, one pointing upward and one pointing downward, the spirit and matter meeting in perfect symmetry. And when we look at the geometry from a 3-dimensional perspective, something very interesting happens. A hexagon unfolds into a cube. And Saturn has long been symbolically associated with the cube, representing structure, matter, and the framework of physical reality, form, time, the architecture of the material world. So when Saturn shifts into a new sign of the zodiac, it's not just another planetary movement. It's as if the architecture of reality is beginning a new blueprint. And right now, Saturn has entered Aries, the very first sign of the zodiac. And Aries is the spark of creation. It's the ignition point of life, the beginning of the entire zodiac cycle. which means Saturn entering Aries signals the beginning of a completely new structural cycle. And today, March 6th, Venus enters Aries, activating Saturn's presence there. Venus represents harmony, beauty, and resonance. So when Venus moves into Aries and approaches Saturn, symbolically, it's almost like a bell being struck, a new tone entering the cosmic field. Saturn is the architect. Venus is the harmonizer. Aries is the ignition point. So while the Virgo eclipse breaks down the old soil of our lives, Saturn quietly begins building the structure of the new world. And this process leads us directly towards an incredibly important gateway. On March 19th, the new moon in Pisces arrives. Pisces is the final sign of the zodiac, the cosmic ocean, the place where everything dissolves back into pure potential. And from that ocean, a new seed forms. And then just a day later, on March 20th, the vernal equinox arrives as the sun enters Aries, marking the beginning of a brand new astrological year. Day and night become equal. Light and darkness balance. And the next cycle of life begins. So when we zoom out and look at the entire sequence unfolding right now, the pattern becomes very clear. The Virgo eclipse breaks down the old structures. Mercury retrograde dissolves outdated beliefs. Venus enters Aries and strikes a new harmonic tone, and Saturn begins building a new structure. And the equinox ignites the new cycle of life. But the image that continues to stay with me is the soil, because composting always happens in darkness first. Before the seed sprouts, before the green shoots appear, the soil must break down what came before. And maybe that's exactly where we are collectively right now. The old world is decomposing. The soil is becoming fertile. And somewhere beneath the surface, a new tone is forming, a new vibration, a new ring in the cosmic bell. And when the equinox arrives, my vibration may begin crystallizing into an entirely new structure of reality. So if things feel uncertain right now, if old identities are dissolving, if it feels like it's breaking down before it rebuilds, well, it is. And you may not be lost by it. You may simply be standing inside the compost pile of creation. And in compost, well, this is where new life begins. We've got this, Soul Fam. So much love.